I find change disgusting. All it does is lead to broken floor tiles. So, I've decided to start the anti-change in core to stop all unwanted change in the world. After all, who else is gonna do it? Alright, so I'm gonna work on a website to promote my group some more, get the word out a bit. So all I've gotta do is change this default text here to water. This isn't gonna work out, is it? Some say war doesn't change. Call of Duty could tell you. But when it does change, there's always one thing that comes to my mind. Command & Conquer Remastered Collection is one of the best remasters for a game I've ever seen. From audio to visual, UI to gameplay, it pretty much nails everything a remaster should set out to do, and it came completely out of left field. But before I begin to talk about that, here's a brief rundown of the Command & Conquer series leading up to this point. Beginning in 1995, the series of Command & Conquer was created by Westwood Studios, who was known for other games like Dune 2 at the time. RTS games were at their peak in the 90s and early 2000s, and the first CNC, which I will refer to by its community-given name, Tiberian Dawn, was pretty important to bringing out that popularity. A year later, in 1996, Command & Conquer Red Alert was released, and while playing on the same engine, it brought a lot of new features and improvements. From 1997 to 1999, there was a bit of pause before resuming with Tiberian Sun and Red Alert 2 a year later, which many consider to be the peak of the series. Running on new engines, these two games were a vast leap from Red Alert just 4 years prior. A sort of spin-off in the form of Command & Conquer Renegade was released in 2003, being a first-person shooter, and Command & Conquer Generals was a traditional RTS set in a different universe from the Red Alert and Tiberium games. Electronic Arts started to do some stuff in 2003 and merged Westwood into EA Los Angeles after purchasing them, and with that another dry spell of games came in. 2007 and 2008 picked up the pace again with Tiberium Wars and Red Alert 3, and while not being as well received as the prequels, they weren't too bad either. Then CNC 4 released in 2010, and that was a mistake. And then 8 years later there's Rivals, that was also a mistake. And yeah, while war may change, sure doesn't change for the better. Then, finally in 2018, the first news of some remasters leaked, and in 2020 this thing was released, and here we are now with Petroglyph Studios spearheading the project. Corporate essentially says that Remastered Collection contains the first two Command & Conquer games, being Tiberian Dawn and Red Alert, which have been rebuilt and have other polishes in various other areas of the game. These include better multiplayer, extras, and remastered sound, among other various things. While I won't be focusing too much on the actual run of these games, more so the remastered qualities, it'll be fair if I give a rundown of the basics. Like most real-time strategy games, your goal is to take down all enemy forces while maintaining and building up your own. Units are created from various buildings using credits, and harvesters makes runs to build up funding. Tiberian Dawn and Red Alert are some of the most by-the-book examples of RTS, and while they don't have super complex text trees and varying currency, they're far from shallow. Sure, the early game is kinda boring, but that feeling of crushing your opponent's industry is one that can't really be shown off. Yeah, it's what makes the genre so fun. Believe it or not, there is a reason for this. In terms of plot, both take place in alternate universes. Tiberium Dawn focuses on the discovery of a new valuable element known as Will, Tiberium, landing on Earth in 1995, and the subsequent struggle between the Global Defense Initiative and the Brotherhood of Nod. While Red Alert has Einstein travel back in time to prevent the Second World War, but in turn creating an aggressive Soviet Union. The first thing to notice would be the remastered visuals of the game. As for the core gameplay, they're passable. Visibility is improved for sure, and the real-life influences are more apparent for each unit, which is a plus. The fact that sprite-based animation is still used here is pretty cool, and the ability to switch from modern and classic graphics instantly without a delay is actually really fun to mess with, but a lot is still below the waves in this field. However, when we move away from the visuals of the action, the effort put in begins to shine through. Full motion videos of the way stories are told in CNC, and while CG cutscenes have been made a bit blurry, the upscaling for the live action sections are masterful and are so clear considering most of the master tapes are long gone. Heck, even being on par from stuff a few years ago. And finally, in terms of the visuals, you have the completely remade stuff. Not just simple animations and such, but rather full-on remix. Logos, screens, even the original installation sequence are all preserved and redone in full-scale resolution with higher frame rates and polished text, sound, pretty much everything. And these are some of the best work I've ever seen. Enough on looks though, improvements and changes are on the menu. Obviously menus have been changed physically and visually, and the style fits each game. UI has been cleaned up, such as skirmishes now having physical representations of what country you're playing as, among other features. Bigger buttons or readable fonts, as well as map previews to name a few. The UI and quality of life expands into gameplay as well. Originally, selecting units and structures to build was pretty time consuming. Each had their own scroll bar and you have to press up or down to find what you wanted to build. Now, buildings, infantry, vehicles, and super weapons have their own categories complete with their own hotkeys which can be customized to your heart's content. Oddly enough, zooming in was also not in the original game, but that's here in the remastered version, which definitely helps with visibility some more. All keyboard actions can be changed, and mouse controls can be switched from modern to classic on the fly, and can even be fine-tuned with certain options being weeded out. The sounds of war are remembered quite well, and Remastered manages to capture a great feeling with them. Almost all sounds have had their original sources discovered and are re-implemented in higher quality. The original voice actor of the electronic video agent even created new takes for Tiberian Dawn. Though, if you end up preferring the classic compression, you're able to switch both the voices and sound effects back to their original states. Makes sense, as it's always nice to head back every once in a while. Effects are only half the battle here, as CNC is known for its great score. I personally found this series through its music, and the variety of metal riffs from techno and industrial mixed in with voice clips and sound effects is simply masterful, and the remaster technically contains 3 separate soundtracks. That's right, 3, totaling to over 10 hours of unique tracks in one simple game, which to say the least is great to some sort of exponent. Obviously, you get the original compressed soundtracks by Frank Lopacki from 1995 and 1996, but there's also higher quality decompressed versions also done by Frank, and there's finally Frank's own band, the Tiberian Sons, which have re-recorded and created new compositions of the best selections from each game, and included are some songs not even in the remastered games. The in-game jukebox makes it easy to weed out undesirable tracks and create your own personal playlist. This, personally, aside from the redone art, is where time and effort put in is demonstrated to great effect. Before closing this off, there are some more bonus features to cover. On the main menu is where an extras gallery is included, which is pretty neat. It contains green screen footage of the FMVs, unreleased soundtracks, comparisons, artwork, and various behind the scenes such as props. These are collected by finishing levels from the campaign and elsewhere, and while more useful collectibles like extra missions would have been awesome additions, these are more than sufficient, and heck, Petroglyph didn't even have to add these, so who am I to complain? In some sense, Remastered does include those extra tasks, though. The expansion packs missions are here from both games as expected, but the console versions from Tiberian Dawn's N64 port and Red Alert Retaliation, among others, provide plenty of content to play through. Skirmishes were not originally in Tiberian Dawn, but now you're able to head into some basic matches against AI. Last but not least, multiplayer has been completely overhauled. A ranked quick match with leaderboards have been put in place to see how you stack up against other players, and a more responsible server browser allows for custom-tooled matches against anyone in the world, and even workshop support for custom maps via an included editor, and new balance changes to further enhance the experience for the modern day. These aren't forced in though, so if you feel like the old rule set is more fun, it perfectly allows for it. That's pretty much everything with Command & Conquer Remastered Collection. Sure, on the surface of it being taken as a standard game, it's alright, but taken as a remaster, it's pretty excellent. CNC Remastered sets out and completes exactly what it's here to do. It provides the complete experience of the first 2 Command & Conquer games, along with improved support for the modern era, great quality of life changes, and fun bonuses for any fan of the series. Unfortunately, that ended up being its greatest fall in my opinion. RTS games have been dead for a while now. After all, their peak was in the 90s. Their simple nature made it easy to play online, and CNC styles of full motion video and the B-movie feel of it all really worked in the time of the late 1900s to early 2000s. As time went on, though, players began to leave the genre. Strategy games were somewhat made out of limitations, and now that other types of games are more accessible, more impressive, and to some, more fun, it made sense that companies like EA left the ship, especially considering the performance of CNC4. As such, this could have been a big revival of the series and the genre as a whole. It strips down the basic elements of real-time strategy games into their most basic elements in a new, more appealing package that new fans would enjoy and old fans could relate to. And while it did bring in those old fans, the lack of advertising by EA because, well, their EA didn't help the game too much in the long run. If anything, it was surprising that EA let this happen at all, to be honest. If anything, though, that lack of advertising might be a good thing. Scope of that whole field is along the lines of, this controversial journal is responsible for 5 felonies in the United States. Do you want me to make it 6? So, after looking over that, I've decided to change this into bad, which is why I'm going to structurally reform the anti-changing core to be all for change now. So I can actually finish the website now and publish it. This will prevent further changes, but well,